Oi, listen up, gits. In today's video, we're taking on the meanest, greenest question in the galaxy. Who's the strongest orc in each clan? From the brutal goths to the flashiest bad moons, we're finding out which of these mad lads would crump the rest in a proper scrap. You guys have no idea how much that hurt my voice. This kicks off a brand new series where we'll be diving into the Galaxy Xenos races, the Eldar, Necrons, Tau, and many, many more, and picking out the strongest warriors from each of them. When we're done, we'll line them all up and finally settle the score. Who is the strongest Xenos in Warhammer 40k?
That's what I'm talking about.
For today's showdown, we're looking at the 6 major orc clans. The Goths, Evil Suns, Bad Moons, Snakebites, Blood Axes, and Death Skulls. We'll break down who each of them are, talk about their toughest war bosses, and crown the top git of every clan. And just to make things, in traditional Fallen Gal style, extra autistic, we'll finish by power scaling the most powerful weird boys and Gretchens in the galaxy. If this video gets enough likes and comments, maybe we can cover the minor clans in a different video. Let's aim for the classic goal, 1,000 likes and 250 comments. If you guys hit it, which I think you will, I'll do a part 2 covering the minor clans. And next week, we will finally return to the land of Space Marines, because it's time to tackle the Chaos Warbands. But for right now, it's time to look at some big old green boys. So grab your choppas, strap in for some green-fueled carnage, and remember, it may be power scaling time, but there's only one thing we should be shouting right now. Say it with me, fellas. Wag! The Goths are the biggest and meanest orcs in the entire galaxy. If you were to take the word orc and distill it down to its purest form, nothing but rage, muscle, and the desire to punch something over and over and over again until it stops moving, you'd end up with a goth. And I know what you're thinking, it's not that type of goth. It's a goth that is 10 feet tall, green, and is probably trying to eat you. They throw fists over the smallest things, a glare, a grunt, or something standing too close, and by the end of it, no one even remembers what the fight was about. They just know it was a good one. This constant infighting actually keeps them quite sharp, turning every goth mob into a squad of close combat veterans who live for the next scrap. Goths refuse to use strategy, instead opting to charge across the battlefield in massive waves, each boy following the one ahead, because if there's an orc running, there must be something worth crumping at the other end. They prefer fighting on foot, only using trucks or wagons to get close enough to jump out and bash skulls face to face. But the most important thing about being a goth is wearing the color black, because black, as every goth knows, is the color of toughness. Fancy colors or camouflage are for wimps and weird boys. Their love for battle and brute strength makes them natural leaders amongst the orcs. Many of the greatest war bosses in history, the kind that start entire sector-shattering wogs, come from the Goth clan. And when it comes to the strongest, the Goths have no shortage of contenders. So now, the question is, amongst these black-clad bruisers, who truly stands as the King of Krumpin? Let's meet the contenders. For the Goth clan, we have 5 big old green boys to look at here. Garak, the Arch Killer, Gruk Face Ripper, Gutrak Deathhead, Deathgob, and of course, Gazkulmak Urak Thraka, the Great Green Prophet. Damn, these Goths love to name themselves with the letter G. Let's go through each of them, starting with Garak. Garak, also known as the Arch Killer, is a fearsome Goth warboss who commands a large wog across the Forsar sector. Rising to dominance within his own clan, he drew numerous warbands under his banner, quickly becoming the sector's most notorious orc warlord. He has launched repeated assaults on Imperial outposts and shipping, showing off both his brutal strength and strategic cunning. His greatest feat came when the Imperium attempted a surgical strike to assassinate the rising warboss. Using Raven Guard Space Marines and Elysian drop troops, Garak, aided by the brilliant Buzzgob, not only survived but crushed the raid, proving his combat prowess. But that's about it in terms of feats for Garak. but retaining control over a large wog is quite impressive and will definitely be factored into our final decision when looking at all the orcs from the Goth clan. Why, you may ask? Because orcs only follow the strongest, which implies that out of millions of boys under his banner, Garak was the undisputed top dog, likely having fought rivals and continuously proven his dominance to maintain his position. Second, we have Garuk Face Ripper, who sounds like quite a nice fella. He is the war boss of the Red Wog, and rose to power by brutally defeating his own war boss, earning his nickname by literally ripping the face off his predecessor with his monstrous power claw, a custom buzzsaw that magnifies his already terrifying strength. Standing 10 feet tall and built like a mountain of pure muscle, Garuk embodies the ferocity and rage of the Goths, inspiring thousands of boys to follow him into battle. Even when unarmed, his sheer presence terrifies foes, and his habit of personally leading every single charge ensures he's at the center of every fight. His greatest combat accomplishment outside of killing his former war boss occurred when he tore open a malfunctioning drop pod to slaughter 10 Space Marines of the Obsidian Glaives chapter with ease. In terms of leadership, his Red Wog has spread across the Sanctus Reach, drawing orc fleets from across the system, resulting in him being regarded as blessed by Gork himself. Recently, he would survive a series of accidental explosions designed to kill him, which would result in him leading a new Wog, devastating even more worlds. Unfortunately, this is the extent we see from this Red Menace. But just like Garak, retaining control over a large Wog will be factored into our final decision when it comes to the strongest Goth. Our third candidate is Gutrak Deathhead, a fearsome Goth known for his massive bionic claw and a serrated steel-like skull mask, often splattered with the blood of his latest victim. Gutrak earned his reputation fighting for the great tyrant of Jaga, distinguishing himself as one of the tyrant's deadliest warriors. Gutrak's greatest feat is pretty fucking impressive, fellas. On Eclipos, he led his Goths in a devastating assault against an Adeptus Mechanicus research outpost, personally tearing through tech priests and gun servitors. But that is not the feat I'm talking about, fellas. After defeating the Mechanicum, Gutrak discovered, of course, a massive door that had been sealed off, and naturally, him and his boys tore it off, exposing a massive army of, get this, Necrons waiting on the other side. Without needing orders, the boys charged into the cave, hacking and smashing their way through it, until Gutrak personally fought and shattered the Necron leader in half, ripping off his metal face to wear as a mask, taking the name Deathhead in honor of his new trophy. So why is this fight so impressive? Well, because it strongly implies that Gutrak defeated a Necron Lord in single combat. To truly grasp the magnitude of that feat, we need to quickly scale a Necron Lord and see just how powerful that makes Gutrak. Necron Lords are ancient, soulless beings, commanding legions of Necron warriors and masters of close quarters combat, wielding weapons that can cut through nearly anything and shrug off injuries that would kill most foes. Among their arsenal are the Staff of Light, which channels raw energy from the air into devastating lightning bolts while simultaneously freezing nearby limbs to the point of shattering. Warscythe's living metal weapons capable of slicing through heavy armor and energy fields, which have been seen to cleave the sides of even Leman Russ battle tanks. Void blades, energy swords used by the Triarch Praetorians that destabilize molecular bonds on contact, and hyper-phase swords, dimensionally phased blades that can sever vital organs effortlessly. On top of that, many Necron Lords are backed by resurrection orbs, allowing them to heal from almost any injury or return from death entirely. We don't know exactly which weapon the Necron Lord on Eclipos was armed with. The 7th edition Ork Codex doesn't go into that much detail, but it's safe to assume that he has at least one of these devastating weapons. Despite this, Gutrak still came out on top, relying solely on his massive bionic claw and raw strength to defeat a foe who can effortlessly tear through most conventional weaponry. That makes his victory all the more impressive. After the Deathhead, we have Deathgob, who is a Goth warphead, who commands a weird Wog in the wake of the Great Rift's creation. I know I could have included him in the Weird Boy section at the end of the video, but he is technically a Goth, so I'm putting him here. Actually, you know, if he loses this section, I'm going to include him in the Weird Boy debate as well, just because of how silly his name is. Sound good, herd? Let's continue. Death Gob originally served under Warboss Grok Ironfist, but that all changed with the formation of the Great Rift. With the warp spilling into the material realm and more Weird Boys beginning to spawn, Grok Ironfist's Wog began to destabilize. Seizing his chance, Death Gob rallied his Weird Boys and launched an attack against his former warboss. In a brutal duel, Death Gob faced Grok Ironfist in single combat and slew him, claiming command of the Wog for himself. His rise was so immense that the Farseers of Ulfway foresaw him as a future threat to their craft world. Unable to stop him directly, they manipulated Imperial forces, including several regiments of the Astra Militarm, to slow his advance. Damn, even the Eldar saw him as a threat. Death Gob's quickly becoming one of my favorite gets on this list. From the fact that he defeated a warboss in single combat, we can gather that Death Gob is a highly competent Weird Boy with formidable psychic abilities. From what we see in White Dwarf, issue 454, A Galaxy at Wog, Weird War, we can assume that he can most likely channel raw psychic energy into devastating blasts, allowing him to tear apart both flesh and machines, manipulate the warp to create unpredictable and destructive effects, and even perform feats like the jump, teleporting himself and his boys across the battlefield to strike when least expected. Combined all of that together, and Death Gob is a terrifying force who blends the Goth's love of close combat with near unparalleled warp field versatility, resulting in one of the most dangerous orcs in the galaxy. And last, but definitely not least, by a wide, fat whale-sized margin, we have the man, the myth, the herald of the green tide, Ghazghkull Mak Uruk Thraka, the self-proclaimed prophet of the green tide, known to the Imperium as the Beast of Armageddon, and is the most notorious orc warboss of the current setting. Rising from a lowly orc on Urk, Ghazghkull survived getting shot in the dome, which actually resulted in him unlocking his latent fucking psychic powers. These psychic powers gave him a vision from Gork and Mork, which told him to control the galaxy in their name. And so he did. Over the decades, he has led countless wogs, which include attacking Armageddon, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Wow!
Although he has not exactly achieved victory in those instances, he still is, without a doubt, the most influential orc warbosses in the current setting. But we're not talking about generalship here though, fellas, we're talking about combat. So let's get to his greatest feats. Before even leaving his birth world, Ghazghkull defeated 5 orc warbosses either in straight up duels or physical challenges. Snakebite's warboss Grudbolg, the Evil Sons Shazfrag, the Bad Moons Snazdad Taka, the Blood Axes Stratgum, and the Goth Ugraka to his side. Damn, these orc names are silly as fuck, guys. But of course, he did not stop there. He then next bested a Bloodthirster, a Greater Demon of Khorne, in single combat, which already shows him as one of the strongest beings in the setting, as defeating a Greater Demon of Khorne or any Greater Demon is no joke. But then we get to his greatest anti-feat, which may be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my cow life.
I may not have a brain, gentlemen, but I have an idea.
This occurs in the book Psychic Awakening, Saga of the Beast. In it, he fights Ragnar Blackmane. And you would think that since Ghazghkull Thraka defeated a greater demon, he would be able to easily kill a space marine. Well, fellas, you're fucking wrong.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Ghazghkull gets decapitated in single combat, which may be one of the greatest anti-feats I've seen in my life. Ragnar Blackmane may have been seriously injured in their duel, but he still came out victorious. So you may be asking yourself, if Ghazghkull is dead, decapitated, why are we even talking about him? Well, he gets revived in the most orcish way possible. 3 of his helpers, Makari, Bullets, and Mad Doc Grotsnik, recover his body and enact the most insane resurrection plan imaginable. The Mad Doc crafts his body into a new colossal suit of armor, and using a generator orbiting between the Materium and Immaterium, they channel a beam of green lightning directly into Ghazghkull's corpse. The process had a 4 in 5 chance of vaporizing half the planet, but somehow, yes, emphasis on somehow, it succeeded. After 10 days and nights of continuous lightning strikes, Ghazghul was reborn.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Brought back bigger and more powerful than ever. So that brings us to the question, just how powerful is Ghazghul Thraka right now? Oh no, I guess we have to step into the cowhole herd. With his new bionic body, enhanced muscles, and psychic energy amplified to obscene levels, it's safe to say he's surpassed every previous form of himself. His size now rivals that of a dreadnought, and his armor fused with both mechanical and warp-charged orc technology turns him into a literal walking tank. Psychically, his connection to the Wog has deepened. He's now more of a living conduit of orc belief, able to influence trillions through psychic resonance alone. While Ghazghul still likely falls short of true Primarch tier power, which is complete bullshit in my mind. Like, how is Games Workshop going to make Ghazghul the leader of the orc faction and then have one Space Marine kill him?
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck. Oh my.
It's just really not good for the setting when you have the Orks or the Tyranids or the Eldar who all have these other boss monsters, say the Swarm Lord or the Phoenix Lord, get killed in the silliest way possible, and most of the time it's by a named Space Marine. Like Hurt, how many times has Calgar killed an Avatar Arcane, a Greater Demon, or a Swarm Lord? When in reality they are Primarch level foes and probably he should not be able to do that. In fact, if you're looking at his feats on paper, Marneus Calgar is on Primarch level, which is so stupid. And I know some of you are like, "Go, that doesn't make any sense, he's still just a Space Marine." Fellas, look at his feats. He's killed a Lord of Skulls easily, he's defeated a Swarm Lord, a Demon Prince, multiple times, a Greater Demon, an Avatar Arcane, the list goes on and on and on. And then you're gonna look at me and tell me, he's not a low Primarch level character, Cal. I'm just gonna look at you back and throw a jar of milk at your head and say, hey man, I don't make up these silly feats. I'm just reading them on paper. Sorry, I kind of went on a rant about Marneus Calgar right there, and I apologize. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, that Ghazghul Thraka, the leader of the Orks faction and supposedly one of the strongest war bosses in the history of 40k, dies to a single named Space Marine. Yeah, that is very silly. But before I have a brain aneurysm, let's get back on subject here, fellas. Even with that anti-feat, I feel like his physical might, durability, and psychic presence could very well place him on the level of a custodian guard. Perhaps even above them when he's fully enraged and fueled by a galaxy-spanning Wog. In short, the prophet of the Wog has evolved into something far beyond what even the Imperium feared before. Alright, I know, Ghazghul Thraka sounds like the winner, but let's do this by the book, Herd. Which means, let's compare feats and decide who deserves to be the champion of the Goth clan. Now before doing that, I feel like I should discuss how orc fighting affects their power level and combat prowess. See, orcs aren't like humans or Astartes, who peak physically and rely purely on training or enhancements. Nah, orcs are built different, literally. Every time an orc fights, wins, or even just survives a good scrap, they physically grow stronger. Their bodies and brains are hardwired by the old one's bioengineering to adapt and evolve through combat. The more an orc fights, the bigger, meaner, and tougher he gets. This means that experience for an orc is genetic progression. A boy who spends his life brawling through constant war zones will eventually bulk up into a knob, and those knobs who never stop crumping their enemies can rise into full-blown war bosses. And it doesn't stop there, cause now we come to the Wog. An energy surrounding powerful orcs amplifies their growth even further, fueling both their muscles and their minds with raw psychic energy. That's why an orc like Ghazghul is big, because he's strong. His victories and the belief of his boys literally shape him into a living avatar of the orc tide. So when we power scale these orc legends, we're not just comparing skills or feats, we're factoring in biological and psychic snowball effect. The more they fight, the stronger they become. Every duel, every wag, every head they stomp adds to their power, meaning that by the time they hit war boss or weird boy levels, they're already incredibly powerful. Sorry, I probably should have discussed that earlier, but I thought this was as good of a time as any other. Now it's time to compare feats and decide who is the strongest Goth. Let's summarize all the fellows we've looked at. Garak, the Archkiller, survived an elite assassination strike led by the Raven Guard and Elysian drop troops. Then we have Gruk Face Ripper, who earned his name in the traditional good old-fashioned Orky way by literally ripping the face off his former Ork war boss. Then he went on to tear open a drop pod and slaughter 10 Space Marines easily before leading his Red Wog to consume entire systems. Even multiple explosions couldn't keep him down. Third, we have Gut-Track Deathhead, who most likely killed a Necron Lord in single combat. A being that is armed with god-tier weapons capable of cutting through tanks, regenerating through resurrection orbs, and shrugging off what would vaporize lesser beings. Gut-Track beat one of these monsters in single combat and then wore his face as a mask. This guy is aura farming to the max. Fourth, we have Deathgob, who killed his own war boss and took control of the entire WoG through psychic might alone. Even the Eldar Farseers of Ulfway fear his power. And finally, we have Gazgul Mak Uruk Thraka, the living legend himself, the prophet of the Green WoG, who's beaten 5 war bosses,
Yeah, baby. Oh, shit.
crushed a greater demon of Khorne in single combat, been decapitated sadly by Ragnar Blackmane,
That's disappointing.
and since then been resurrected through Orky science and sheer madness into an even bigger, stronger version of himself. His presence alone draws Orks from light years away to join his great WAG. That's how much power radiates off him. When you line all of these guys up, this one isn't really much of a contest, just as you expected. Garak, Gruk Face Ripper, Gut-Track, and Deathgob are all brutal, terrifying, and worthy of their legends. But Gazgul isn't just a war boss, he's kind of an Ork force of nature. He's the living embodiment of the WoG, a prophet whose will shapes the Ork race. So yeah, this round's pretty easy. The strongest Goth Ork is Gazgul Mak Uruk Thraka, the great green prophet himself. I did say though that if Deathgob lost in this round, he would be featured in the Weird Boy section, so this is not the last time you will be seeing this weird sounding fella. The Evil Sons and their yellow painted trucks are next.
Now this is pod racing.
The Evil Sons are defined by one simple obsession: speed. These Orks live for the roar of engines, the stench of Prometheum, and the thrill of going as fast as Orkly possible. For them, nothing beats tearing across the battlefield on bikes, trucks, and buggies while unloading Daka and screaming WAG at the top speed. Their mobs are packed with speed colts and mech boys, since someone's gotta keep their jalpies from exploding. Well, exploding too early. Every truck and bike is slathered in red paint and flames because, as every Evil Son knows, the red ones go faster. They're the fastest Orks out there, envied by everyone who can only watch the dust trail vanish behind them. Now with the Evil Sons, it's worth noting that most of their champions are just as vehicle obsessed as the rest of the clan. They love tearing into battle strapped to some roaring contraption of death, so if they happen to kill a powerful enemy while behind the wheel, we'll still count the feat, but it won't carry as much weight as one earned on foot, mano-y-mano. With that in mind, let's take a look at their biggest legends. The fastest, loudest, and most dangerous Evil Son boys who've ever hit the gas pedal. We have 4 candidates for this clan: Skullcrumpa, Jazzgob, Gorguts Ed Unta, and Shazfrak. We'll start with Skullcrumpa, who was once an Evil Son's warlord, serving under Warboss Graz before breaking off to start his own rampage. His biggest claim to fame? Slaying Kendril, chapter master of the Emperor's Swords, an absurdly impressive feat. But I will admit, Mr. Skullcrumper does have an anti-feat of losing to Captain Jaghatan Khan of the White Scars, leading an assault on Cardrim where he fought both White Scar Space Marines and Necrons before being slain. Still, defeating a chapter master in single combat is quite impressive. Next, we've got Jazzgob, the leader of the infamous Jet Boys. Jazzgob and his lads are legends among the Evil Sons for their insane custom rides. bikes and wagons powered by Daka jet engines. His personal bike is a roaring monstrosity that bucks like a wild squig thanks to the turbine strapped beneath him. But Jazzgab isn't just his flashy bike. He's got some combat feats to back it up. When his warband boarded the Space Hulk Star Krumpa alongside Big Mech Gogtooth, they found it crawling with gene stealers. After days of brutal fighting, Jazzgab killed the Broodlord, ramming it into a wall with his warbike and melting its face clean off. Now, like I mentioned earlier, because Jazzgab pulled this off while riding his vehicle, the feat's gonna count a bit less in our power scaling. It's still impressive as hell, but not quite on the same level as a good old-fashioned mono-e-mono fight. Sorry, Jazzgab, your name's jazzy as hell, but we've gotta keep things fair here. Then there's Gorgut's Edunta, one of the most infamous orcs in the entire setting. Originally a blood axe, Gorguts is now an evil son. Over the years, he has led wogs across multiple worlds, constantly surviving defeats that would have killed any other war boss. His list of combat feats are downright ridiculous. He's killed Lord Kral, a champion of the World Eaters, conquered the entire Gruvon system, and most recently, claimed the Spear of Cain as his own trophy. Yeah, that's right guys. The Spear of fucking Cain, the literal weapon of an Eldar god. Let's quickly scale that weapon to see how powerful Gorguts is currently. This spear was the entire reason everyone in Dawn of War 3 decided to show up to fight. Gorguts, Gabriel Angelos, Maka, and their armies all tore each other apart just trying to grab it. It's described as a relic of catastrophic power, the kind of weapon that sounds like it could erase continents or vaporize armies. But the thing is, guys, we never actually see what it does. The whole prophecy around the spear turned out to be a trap designed to free a bloodthirster, and once that thing got loose, the planet basically went to hell. A chaos sorcerer claimed the spear, unleashed a demonic tide, and then 3 rival factions had to team up to stop it, destroying the planet in the process. So it's kinda got all the narrative hype of a god-slaying weapon, but no confirmed combat feats. We don't see it vaporize a demon, slice through a titan, or channel psychic energy. It's just a weapon of pure potential. Scaling wise, we'd put the Spear of Cain in the unknown but potentially god tier category. It's said to have catastrophic power, and considering it's tied to Cain, the Elder God of War, it's likely something that could rival a greater demon weapon or possibly a fragment of a Catan shard. That is possibly a massive stretch. Since we never actually see it used in combat, we can't confirm anything beyond the fact that it's hyped as hell. Finally, our 4th candidate is Shazfrag, or as the Orks call him, arrives at the fight before it's a fight, which might be the most evil son's name imaginable. He's the grand speed boss of Ghazghkull Thraka's evil sons and part of the council of clan bosses. His defining moment came when Ghazghkull himself challenged him to a warbike race to decide dominance. Despite Thraka riding a literal piece of junk, he pulled ahead, and when Shazfrag tried to cheat by shooting his fuel tank, Makari the Kroot shot first, causing Shagfrag's gun to explode. After crashing and nearly dying, Shazfrag admitted defeat and swore loyalty to Ghazghkull, becoming one of his most trusted speed bosses during the 2nd and 3rd wars for Armageddon. Yes, I know that's not exactly a real combat feat, but I wanted to include it because it's literally Fast and Furious in fucking space. So who is the strongest of this bunch? Before moving on, I feel like since some of these orcs on this list are currently dead, I need to mention that since orcs and just Xenos in general have such small rosters of powerful characters, as opposed to say the Imperium or Chaos, I will be factoring in characters that are currently dead just to give a little boost to the Xenos roster. With that, let's summarize each of these fellas' feats. Skull Krumpa killed a chapter master, Jazzgab rammed and burned a gene stealer broodlord to death, Gorguts killed a chaos champion, conquered an entire star system, and wields the motherfucking Spear of Cain, and Shazfrag raced Ghazghkull Thraka himself and survived, which isn't yet again a combat feat, but it's fucking cool, guys. Like, come on, it's Phantom Menace pod racing at its finest, so I'm going to include it. Out of this bunch, it's a pretty easy answer yet again. While all of them are impressive in their own right, Gorgut's Edunta stands out as the strongest of the Evil Sons clan. He's a warlord who's cheated death more times than anyone can count, and he's wielding a weapon forged by an elder god. You can't really top that, guys. Unless you've got a bigger, louder, faster orc, and even then, you'll probably just end up as another head on Gorguts' pointy stick. So the champion of the Evil Sons is Gorguts Edunta. Up next are the Bad Moons, who are playing Monopoly instead of 40k. The Bad Moons are the flashiest, fattest, and richest of all the orc clans. Why is this, you may ask? Well, their teeth grow faster than anyone else's, and since teeth are the orcs' currency, that basically makes them the billionaires of orc society. Now, before you start shouting unfair advantage, it's worth noting that in true orky fashion, this is all perfectly balanced because any other orc who wants their teeth can just bash their heads in and take them. This brutal economic system means Bad Moons have to spend part of their fortune just staying alive, buying the biggest guns, best armor, and loudest wagons to keep the would-be robbers at bay. Their war bosses are known to roll around in heavily armored battle wagons, armed to the teeth with custom weapons so powerful they'd make mech boys drool. Because of their absurd wealth, the Bad Moons act like kind of a merchant class of orc society. They love trading with other clans, swapping teeth for guns, gear, and grub, and since they can afford the best food, they're often noticeably fatter than the average orc. So while the Bad Moons might not have the biggest orcs like the Goths or the fastest trucks like the Evil Sons, their economy itself is a weapon of mass destruction. And in the galaxy of Warhammer 40k, money can't buy happiness, but for the Bad Moons, it definitely buys more Deka. But who is their strongest warrior? Should we rank wealth for this section? It might be kind of fun. Alright, I've convinced myself to kind of factor in their wealth when power scaling the Bad Moons candidates. So this time around, we're not just asking who's the strongest, we're asking who's the richest.
40,000 I'm rich. Hey.
Our candidates for the Bad Moons clan are Mogdos Guilttooth, Captain Bradruck, Nazdrag Oog, Oodgrub, Uthak Blackhawk, and Garzgag Teeth Grabba. First up, we've got Mogdos Guilttooth, the richest orc in all of Caradon. In the Orc 7th edition codex, it is stated that he was once just a Fang Ripper scavenger, behind High Fleet Leviathan. Mogdos became the sole survivor of a Tyranid-infested world, inheriting the entire scrap fleet's fortune. He used that massive wealth to ally with arch-arsonist Snagrod, becoming his personal banker and funding some of the biggest war machines in the Caradon Empire. While Mogdos doesn't have the most notable combat feats, his economic might is unmatched. His endless teeth supply lets him buy the best mechs, pain boys, and war gear money can buy, making him arguably one of the most dangerous orcs purely through influence and resources. Second, we have Captain Badruck. Besides looking like a Blackbeard ripoff, he is the most infamous freebooter in orc history. A pirate, warlord, and a walking pile of gold teeth. Originally a Bad Moon, he was kicked out of his clan for being too rich. Since then, he has led his flash gits across the galaxy, fighting alongside nearly every major warlord and becoming a legend amongst orckind for his cunning, swagger, and absurd firepower. Known for his gold-plated armor, ridiculous hats, and custom shooter, the Ripper, Badrak perfectly embodies the Bad Moon obsession with wealth and Daka. But what feats does he have? Well, he doesn't exactly have a ton in terms of straight up combat victories, since as a pirate king, he doesn't exactly fight from the front, but he does have a few that earn him a place on this list. He has raided a Tyranid Nord Queen, helping blunt a tendril of High Fleet Kraken, a near suicidal mission that few orcs could survive. He outshot a Tau Hunter squad, proving his shooter skills are among the best in the galaxy, and is rumored to have slain a Void Whale, a massive space-dwelling creature. This is all from the 8th edition Orcs Codex. Now, I know for a fact that some of you are like, what the fuck is a Void Whale? So, let me explain. Void Whales, also called Space Titans, are colossal warp spawn beasts that drift through the void of space, some reaching up to 12,000 miles long. These creatures are so massive that entire ecosystems of parasites live inside them, including species like the Remor and the Kruvar. Their corpses are considered incredibly valuable, often mined by the leagues of Votan for years on end due to the rare materials and energy-rich remains within. In short, killing a Void Whale is like harpooning a small moon that bites back, which makes Badrak's rumored kill One of the most insane feats in Ork history, if it's true, fellas, which is quite skeptical. After him is Nazdrag Ug Urdgrub, who is mentioned through the 2nd and 3rd Ork Codex as a Bad Moon's warlord renowned for his wealth, cunning, and strategic brilliance. Unlike most orcs, he combines his massive teeth reserves, tactical planning, and resourcefulness, allowing him to outmaneuver both Imperial and Tau forces. He commands a powerful warband and has even gained partial control over a Space Hulk, using it as a mobile fortress, demonstrating that he is exceptionally clever by Ork standards. While Nazdrag, like Nogdos, may not have any known personal combat feats, it is easy to see just how powerful he is as a general and manipulator. He has led campaigns that devastated over 11 Imperial worlds, coordinating devastating raids, and fought alongside Gazgul Thraka during the assault on Pacina IV. He has successfully evaded destruction multiple times, survived multiple crashes and warp anomalies, outwitting his enemies at every turn, showing just how big-brained he is. Our 4th candidate is Uthak Blackhawk, also known as the Gargant Smasher. He is a Bad Moon's warboss whose rise to power is chronicled in the Ork novels Brutal Cunning and Da Big Daka. He began as a boy in Boss Snazhammer's mob and survived near-fatal injuries after destroying a tin boy with Snazhammer's weapon, the Snazhammer. That is so Ork, it is insane. Rebuilt by Mad Doc Draw's Fang, he became larger and more powerful than ever, eventually solidifying his position as boss by defeating rivals and leading Damak-Lord's Tekwag. Blackhawk later seized control of Damak-Lord's forces, gaining notoriety through daring battles against Mechanicum forces, Warlord Titans, Space Marine Centurion warsuits, and even taking down Dark Eldar factions in Kamun Ra, the Dark City. He would eventually kill Damak-Lord in single combat and establish his own WOG. For a Bad Moon, Blackheart's feats are so insane. He destroyed a Warlord Titan by teleporting onto its command head, commandeered a Space Marine Centurion warsuit to overrun defensive Imperial positions, defeated a Demon Engine with the help of Captain Bradrak by using a flyer to push it into a volcano, defeated multiple Dark Elder Archons in Kamun Ra, including Dalgar and Damira, defeated a Castellan robot, and finally his own warboss, Damak-Lord. Who the fuck is this guy? Is he Ork Jesus? Crikey! I will admit though that this guy Blackheart is the protagonist of 2 Ork novels, which explains why his feats are so goddamn impressive. And finally, our last candidate is Gargaz Teeth Grabba, who is a Bad Moon's warboss of WOG Teeth Grabba, currently invading the Imperial hive world of Ludus Alpha. Originally a low-ranking orc named Teeth Grabba and warboss Ugrug Gutrekka's WOG, he was charged with feeding squigs. After surviving a destroyed vehicle and a near-death encounter with the Commissar, thanks to a hair squig, began his rise to power. He fought his way through Ork encampments, Imperial forces, Genestealer cultists, and even White Scar Space Marines to reclaim his hair squig from Gutrekka, who had stolen it at the onset of the battle. After killing Gutrekka in personal combat, he declared himself warboss and renamed the WOG in his own honor. We see this in the video game Warhammer 40k Shoutouts Blood and Teeth, which for those who don't know is a 2D gun platform, which means Mr. Teeth Grabba here is the protagonist of yet another Warhammer installment, this time from a video game. As the main protagonist, he has survived multiple near-fatal incidents, including crashes from destroyed vehicles and spacefaring cruisers. He killed a White Scars Primaris chaplain, slew the Imperial Knight, Horicanarim, overcame a Genestealer cult, Biofungus, and Patriarch. Yes, guys, a fucking Patriarch, and defeated his archenemy, Warboss Gutrekka in single combat. What the hell have these last 2 orcs been eating? Teeth Grabba literally did all this in one battle, guys, just to get his squid hair back. What a legend. If you guys don't know what a squig hair is, it's literally like a wig, but it's a fucking squig that sits on your head.
Fashion meets... It's fashion. It's... Excuse me. It's fashion.
Man, these orcs are freaking silly, guys. So who is the strongest Bad Moon? Well, holy shit, I really don't know. I said I would also take teeth into account, but I don't know if I even have to use that because some of these guys have some of the best feats I've seen in my cow life. Let's summarize these Bad Mama Jamma's feats. Mogdo Skilttooth is famed for his immense teeth fortune, funding the best mechs and pain boys, and surviving a Tyranid attack. though his feats are mostly economic. Captain Badruck leads the Flashgits, combining cunning, mercenary expertise, and combat prowess, including blunting a Hive Fleet Kraken tendril and reportedly slaying a Void Whale. Nazdrag Ugg Erdgrub focuses on strength and wealth, devastating over 11 Imperial worlds and consistently outmaneuvering both Imperial and Chaos forces, showing remarkable generalship despite no real combat feats. Oofhawk Blackhawk rose from near death to Warboss, destroying a Tin Boy, disabling a Warlord Titan, defeating a Demon Engine, invading Kamun Ra, and killing Demek Lord, his former warboss. Finally, Gargaz Teethgrabba, who did his best John Wick impersonation hunting for his hair squig. This is pretty tough, to be honest. Definitely harder than the other two clans we reviewed. Let's start by eliminating some folks. Mogdos and Nazdrag are cool additions and would have been top contenders if we were factoring in teeth more than combat feats. But alas, look at the title of the video. Maybe we should power scale who's the wealthiest in 40k someday. Could be down, Herd, could be down. Let me know down in the comments if you'd be interested in a video like that. But since Mogdos and Nazdrag don't have any combat feats, they are eliminated. See ya later. Which leaves us 3 candidates: Captain Badrak, Oofhawk Blackhawk, and Gargaz Teethgrabba, a orc pirate, a protagonist from a book, and a protagonist from a video game. Let's compare their greatest feats. Captain Badrak is rumored to have killed a Void Whale. Oofhawk Blackhawk defeated his powerful orc warboss, a Tin Boy, and several Dark Elder Archons. And Teethgrabba slew a Primaris Chaplain, a Patriarch, and his own warboss. I think of these 3 legends, and although it pains me considerably because he looks so fucking cool, Captain Badrak is our next elimination. Although being rumored to have defeated a giant whale, the whale probably did not fight back, and thus I can't sadly name him the champion of the Bad Moons clan simply based on hearsay and a loose combat feat. So it comes down to 2 main characters, Oofhawk Blackhawk and Gargaz Teethgrabba. I think the best way to figure this one out is by comparing the foes these 2 defeated. Starting with Teethgrabbas, who defeated a Genestealer Patriarch. Patriarchs are terrifying. They are towering psychic monsters with superhuman strength, blinding speed, and claws sharp enough to shred Terminator armor. They can tear apart both body and mind with ease, making Teethgrabba's victory over one an incredibly impressive feat that speaks to his raw power in direct combat. In contrast, Oofhawk Blackhawk victories against multiple Dark Elder Archons are a little bit harder to measure, as Archons vary wildly in strength depending on their cabal. Some rise to power through sheer cunning rather than physical might, yet even the weakest Archon is armed with the finest war gear Kamun Ra has to offer and must be strong enough to survive constant assassination attempts and power grabs. They likely rank just below a Space Marine Chapter Master or Orc Warboss, but well above an Ethereal or Imperial Guard Commander. While Teethgrabba's accomplishments against apex predators like a Patriarch are more than spectacular, it's important to note that he's a video game protagonist, built to overcome impossible odds like this, where here's Blackhawk is a novel character operating within a more grounded and narratively balanced world. So while Teethgrabba technically boasts the better feats, Blackhawk's victories feel more hard-earned and authentic within the universe's logic. So where does that leave us? Well, this might be the biggest cop-out a cow can pull, but I'm naming them co-champions of the Bad Moons clan. It's just way too hard to definitely place Teethgrabba, a fun, bombastic, and video game character, over Blackhawk, who's one of the coolest orcs and one of the best orc book series out there. Maybe that's a little biased, but hey. That's the way the squig gnaws the cookie. Now that we've wrapped up the bling-laden, DACA-loving Bad Moons, it's time to move on to something a bit more feral. We're heading straight into the Snakebites, the most old-school, beast-wrangling, tradition-obsessed orcs in the galaxy. The Snakebites are the most traditional of all orc clans. They reject flashy tech and fancy war machines, preferring war paint, squigs, and massive boar mounts over force fields and trucks. To them, strength comes from toughness, not tinkering. Their entire way of life revolves around the idea that the old ways are the best ways. And they even prove their resilience through brutal initiation rites, letting venomous snakes bite them just to show they can take it. Many snake bites remain feral orcs even when they could advance, living off the land and thriving on raw instinct and muscle alone. Unsurprisingly, they're also the biggest supporters of the beast snagga subculture. Orcs who fight alongside colossal squigs, tame monstrous beasts, and live for the thrill of the hunt. And when it comes to their champions, the snakebites have some of the most brutal, primal, and beast-wrangling orcs ever to stomp across the galaxy. Let's take a look at their strongest and wildest warlords. For them, we have 4 candidates. Huruk Teef Splinter, Tuskagrub World Killer, Mazrog Scragbad, and Grudbolg. Let's go in reverse order this time, starting with Grudbolg. Grudbolg is one of the oldest and toughest snakebite warlords on record. Serving as the snakebite clan boss under Ghazghkull Thraka himself, Grudbolg earned his place on the Warlords Council of Clan Bosses the hard way, by refusing to die. When Thraka began uniting the orcs of Urk, he challenged Grudbolg in a brutal knife fight in the swamps. Ghazghkull cut his head clean off, but Grudbolg didn't die, as orcs apparently don't die when you cut their head clean off. Headless, he still refused to join Thraka in typical orc fashion, so Thraka held Grudbolg's head and spine together until they reattached itself. They fought again, and the same result occurred as Thraka beheaded him yet again.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
It wasn't until the 3rd time his head was chopped off that Grudbolg finally agreed to join him. Sure, his claim to fame might be losing to Ghazghkull Thraka 3 times in a row, but surviving that 3 times is more than most can say. Our next candidate is Mazrog Scragbad. From the Warhammer 40k Orks Codex 9th edition, he is the ultimate snakebite base snagga. A feral hunter who embodies everything brutal, stubborn, and unstoppable about orc kind. Preferring the company of squigs to other orcs, Mazrog lived in self-imposed exile, spending his life hunting monstrous beasts across the galaxy. His legend truly began during the invasion of the Iron Warriors held world of Urwin II, where he was swallowed whole by a massive subterranean creature known as the Gut Maw. Somehow, Mazrog not only survived inside the creature's stomach, but clawed his way out and killed it from within, later returning to camp half digested and dragging the beast's eyeballs behind him.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Rebuilt with crude bionics by Warboss Gob Grinda's Pain Boys, Mazrog became an even deadlier warrior, wielding the massive Power Claw, Gut Rippa, and mounting the legendary Great White Squig, Big Champa, after a brutal 3-day fight to tame it. All of this make him an obvious candidate for the title of the strongest snakebite. After him is Tuskagrub World Killer, who is a snakebites warboss who fought during the Octurnus War in M42, leading his hordes against both Tyranid and Imperial forces. His campaigns were marked by sheer aggression and unrelenting attacks, pushing deeper into the Sigma Ulstari system and nearly overrunning the Forge world itself. World Killer set his sights on the capital, Forge Spire Alpha Primaris, intending to strike at the heart of the planet's defenses, and fought through a mix of Tyranid remnants and planetary defenders with ruthless efficiency. In terms of combat feats, World Killer fought High Marshal Helbrick of the Black Templars during the invasion of the Forge Spire. In fact, World Killer was nearly overpowering Helbrick and came very close to defeating him, but ultimately the High Marshal was able to rally and strike the World Killer down. And finally, our 4th candidate is Huruk Teef Splinter, who enslaved the entire population of the binary system Corva, forcing them to build a spacecraft vast enough to house his traveling zoo of squigs and other monstrous beasts. After departing for the Imperium's core worlds, Huruk conquered the 9 shrine worlds of Marley Sank and repurposed the Basilica Imperator Majoris into a breeding pen for his notoriously huge squig-offs. Huruk earns a spot on this list for simply weaponizing squig breeding on an interstellar scale, a truly orky achievement on its own. So who is the strongest snakebite? Well, it's definitely not Huruk, who apparently loved the movie We Bought a Zoo. So it comes down to Tuskagrub World Killer, Mazrog Scragbad, and Grudbolg. Tuskagrub World Killer earned his title by going toe-to-toe with High Marshal Helbrick of the Black Templars, one of the Imperium's most feared warriors. Helbrick once fought the Necron Overlord, Imhotep the Stormlord, to a near standstill before finally losing the duel and his hand, so the fact that World Killer almost overcame him is no small feat. Then there's Mazrog Scragbad. a beast even by orc standards. After surviving an encounter with a colossal gut maw, Mazrog clawed his way out of its guts while killing it from inside. As if that wasn't enough, he went on to tame the legendary Big Champa, a squig so massive it's described as an impossibly vast fleshy maw lined with bladed teeth, and it took Mazrog 3 whole days to subdue it. For reference, Big Champa level squigs probably rank below something like a Custodes, but well above most mortal foes. Finally, there's Grudbolg, whose claim to fame is dying 3 times to Gazgul Thraka.
Well, that sucks.
Yes, that's less legendary warrior and more persistent XP farmer. But hey, effort counts for something, right guys? Right? When power scaling these orcs, the fight really comes down to Mazrog and Tuskrob, which means we're sadly eliminating Mr. Grudbolg. Sorry man, but getting beheaded that many times isn't that good of a showing. Sorry buddy. So it's down to these two. Mazrog's monster slaying and squig taming feats are insanely impressive, but Hellbrick's level places World Killa's performance on a whole different scale. Nearly beating a warrior who can hang with Emotech the Stormlord easily places him above Astartes and is borderline Custodes level, no joke. And you may hate on me for that pick, but it's facts, people. Emotech is definitely Custodes or above Custodes level, and if Hellbrick can go one-on-one with him, that puts him nearly in the same tier, and thus, by power scaling logic, World Killa is briefly below the two. So while Mazrog might be the most orky of the bunch, the crown of the strongest snakebite ultimately goes to Tuskagrob World Killer, the orc who nearly crushed Hellbrick of the Black Templars. With the feral green boys finished, it's time to shift gears and talk about a very different breed of orcs, the Blood Axes. The Blood Axes are the most unorky of all orc clans, and they're proud of it. As stated in White Dwarf 290 as one of the first clans to encounter the Imperium, they picked up all sorts of Hume tricks, using camouflage badly, looting Imperium tanks, and even, Gork forbid, retreating when they're losing. Other orcs call them sneaky gits and traitors, but the Blood Axes see it differently. They're tactical geniuses. They'll trade with humans, fight for humans, and then turn around and crump those same humans if the pay's better elsewhere. As silly as all of that sounds, it's now time to take a look at the biggest and baddest of these backstabbing commandos. We have 3 candidates in total. Borzog, Gratzdaka, Mekadaka, what the fuck is that name? And an Orkamungus. What? Not as many as the other clans, but maybe they're sneaky good. We'll start with Borzog. Borzog is a Blood Axes warboss and is one of the rare orcs who plays the long game. After surviving a brutal defeat at the hands of the Salamanders during the Fire of Fistos, he swore revenge, and millennium later, he actually got it. In M41, Borzog lured the Salamanders into a trap at the Imperial naval base of Thrantos, ambushing their strike force with a hidden fleet and absolutely wrecking them. But when we're speaking of direct combat, we see nothing to truly show us directly how strong he is. But we can do some assuming here. A classic falling cow strategy, which of course has never failed once. Borzog survived 2 direct confrontations with the Salamanders and came out on top the second time, which says a lot. Any orc who can not only outlast but outsmart an entire Space Marine chapter is no ordinary brute. At the very least, Borzog scales above your average Space Marine. Next is Arch Scarlord Gratzdaka Mekadaka, who was a Blood Axe warboss who led Wog Gratzdaka. Who the fuck is naming these guys? Every time I say that name, I'm like, what? Oh my god. Alright, back to the video. I was a little mini autistic cowhole. In M41, he brought ruin to the Imperial Industrial world of Kaldar IV. Under his command, the Orks captured Hive Meridon, slaughtered regiments of Astra Militarum, and even looted a Shadow Sword super heavy tank named Lux Imperator. But wait fellas, it gets even sillier. Gratzdaka was unusually cunning for an orc, donning the garb of an Imperial Guard commander, and allying himself with the weird boy Green Eye. They caused further destruction. Unfortunately, Gratzdaka's story ends in classic orky fashion. He was killed by a Black Templar, which promptly ended his walk.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
And look, I know what you're thinking. Cow, why the fuck did you include this guy? Well, fellas, when you look at the other Blood Axes, they don't have any combat feats whatsoever. I'm serious, look at this. It's horrible, it's horrific, it makes me want to cry and throw up. So at the very least, this guy managed to bag a few hives and a super heavy tank before getting chopped to bits. It's not impressive, but at least it's something. Our third and final candidate is Orks warboss Orkamungus. One of the main antagonists of Dawn of War. He led several massive Ork clans in a brutal siege against Imperial cities and a vital spaceport, nearly wiping out the defenders before the Blood Ravens crashed the party with a surprise drop pod assault. Later, he cut a deal with the Chaos Sorcerer, Sindri Mir of the Alpha Legion, trading Ork muscle for fancy Chaos weapons. Though he hated taking orders from a Hume, he planned to betray them once the Imperials were gone, a plan that never worked out since he got killed by the Blood Ravens shortly after. Yeah guys, I'm telling ya, the Blood Axes are so fucking lame. I could totally be missing someone important and thus making myself look very silly by ragging on them, but I didn't see anyone else besides these three fellas. There is one other passive feat we can kinda take a look at. Orkamungus, as the name suggests, stands at around 3 meters tall, which is roughly 10 feet tall, and weighs over a ton with his mechanical augmentations and raw muscle. Now you could argue that his sheer size and bulk alone puts him among the stronger orcs. But crowning him the strongest blood axe purely because he's big and fat and kind of competent feels a bit silly, even for me. So where does that leave us? I don't know. Let's summarize the three Blood Axe contenders. Borzog survived two encounters with the Salamanders, which already puts him above your average knob, and even scored a win the second time around by ambushing a strike force led by Captain Pelis Mirsan. That's more tactical cunning, which is very Blood Axe, but nothing in the way of raw combat feats. Then there's the silliest name ever, Grazdaka Mekdaka, who managed to invade an Imperial world, loot a Shadow Sword, and give the Astra Militarum a serious headache before ultimately getting smoked by a Black Templar. Not exactly a strong ending, but at least he went out fighting, right? Finally, Orkamungus, one of the big bads from Dawn of War, who nearly crushed the Imperium's defenses before the Blood Ravens intervene, and in-game he could probably take down powerful enemies like Teeth Grabba, but since as a real-time strategy game, he kind of runs around the map and kills people at random, and every single game is different, we can't really consider those real combat feats. He does stand over 10 feet tall and weighs over a ton thanks to his cybernetic enhancements, and probably is the most physically imposing of the bunch. So, who's the strongest Blood Axe? Well, if I could, I would pick all three of them up and throw them in my nearest volcano, Mordor style, but I have to pick one. So, who to pick? Well, none of these options are exactly the best. The worst is probably Grazdaka Mekdaka. He loses to a normal Black Templar, which means he is definitely the weaker of the bunch. So it really comes down to a video game character and a guy whose biggest accomplishment is just surviving 2 hidden runs with the Salamanders. Orkamungus at least has the size and presence advantage, standing 10 feet tall, weighing over a ton, and built like an industrial machine, while Borzog's height, build, or even combat prowess are never mentioned in the Salamander's 8th edition Codex, and since Borzog's feats begin and end with didn't die to Salamanders, it's not much of a contest. So, after further review and a lot of pain, I'm going to give the title of the Blood Axe's champion to Orkamungus. Not a confident pick by any means, but one that has to be made. The Blood Axes, man, wow, they really are bums. Now that we've slogged through the embarrassing show of the Blood Axes, it's time to move on to a clan that actually knows how to make a name for themselves. The Death Skulls. The Death Skulls are the sneakiest and most kleptomaniac of all Ork clans, a mob of scavengers, looters, and recyclers who nick anything that's not bolted down, and even if some things are. After a battle, they're the first to swarm the corpses and wreckage, looting anything shiny or shooty they can get their grubby hands on. They're also hilariously superstitious, painting themselves blue, the luckiest color according to Ork superstition, to keep Mork and Gork on their side. Despite their reputation as untrustworthy thieves, they're absolutely geniuses when it comes to cobbling together war machines and weapons from junk. Their armies are often full of looted tanks, custom combi weapons, and stolen Imperial gear, all jury-rigged to somehow work through sheer Orky willpower and good fortune. Now let's take a look at the strongest Death Skull warriors, the biggest and luckiest among Ork kind. We have 4 candidates: Archmaniac of Calverna, Bullets, Gorgrok, Killfist, and Zog Steeltooth. Sorry, I crack myself up reading these names every single time. We're starting with the Archmaniac of Calverna. From the Ork 7th edition, the Archmaniac of Calverna is the utterly deranged and cybernetically monstrous warboss of the Death Skull-dominated Ork Empire of Calverna. After conquering the Forge World of Magnos Majoris, he decided that being a normal Ork wasn't enough, so he had himself wired directly into the planet's central machine spirit, turning him into the biggest cyborg ever built. This guy literally became a Power Ranger. I'm so fucking jealous. This fusion of meat and metal made him nearly invincible, his body now a walking, or possibly not walking, fortress powered by the forges of an entire world. However, as with most Orky improvements, it came with one teeny tiny downside. The sheer flood of machine data pouring into his brain drove him completely mad. Oh, never mind, I'm not jealous of you. Now, while his empire fields massive armies and mountains of looted tech, their attacks make absolutely no sense. Eventually, Ghazghkull Thraka showed up, beat him into submission, and absorbed him into the Great Wog. So, the Archmaniac might be one of the toughest Orks physically, but he's also a giant, immobile mad mech that probably doesn't even know what day it is.
That's rough, buddy.
Then we have Bullets, or finds bullets he has not lost. Bullets is the cunning Death Skull warlord who rose from second in command to one of Ghazghkull Thraka's most trusted lieutenants. When Thraka began uniting the Orks of Urk, Bullet watched as his own boss, Dregmag, was the first to fall. Rather than waste himself in a hopeless duel, Bullets made the smartest move an Ork can. He joined the winning side. His quick thinking earned the Death Skulls the honor of being the first clan to swear loyalty to Thraka, cementing their place within his council of clan bosses and securing a steady flow of loot, Krumpin, and glory. From there, Bullets carved out a name as one of the most reliable and sneakiest bosses in Ghazghkull Thraka's empire. He fought through the Second and Third Wars for Armageddon, survived the retreat to Golgotha, and even held the Wog together after Ragnar Blackmane decapitated Thraka during the Battle of Grongar. While others might have fled or turned on each other, Bullets kept the Horde united until Mad Dog Grosnick brought the Prophet back with weird Ork science we discussed earlier. Now once again, we see a classic power scaling problem arise.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Which is the fact that some of these guys have no combat feats, and Bullets is one of them. Which makes me want to drive down the freeway at night without a steering wheel going 100 miles per hour without a seatbelt. But I digress. What we can gather is that since Bullets managed to command Ghazghkull Thraka's immense horde without instantly being torn apart, as he must have been challenged by plenty of Orks and survived, so it's safe to assume he's at least competent or maybe a dangerous fighter, even if his biggest weapon might just be his brain. Our third potential champion is Gorgrok Killfist, who was a Death Skulls warboss who led a Wog against the Imperial Knight world of Atrastol during the Second Ork War in M41. His campaign ended at the Siege of Dragonspire, where he was killed by the High King of House Dracos. That's pretty much all we know about him. Not exactly the most inspiring resume. At least we know he fought a knight, and if you look at the fight from Knight's Blade, it's actually a pretty extended fight, and Killfist, with the help of his mechanic exoskeleton, is able to go toe-to-toe with the High King's knight suit, so he's definitely a worthy candidate. And finally, we have Zog Steeltooth, who was a Death Skulls warboss mentioned in Wog Ghazghkull, a Codex Ork supplement 7th edition. He took command of much of the Ork forces on Arcturus while Overfiend Gorsnick was away fighting on Armageddon. And upon Ghazghkull Mak Urak Thraka's arrival, he pledged loyalty to the Prophet. It's unclear what happened to Zog after this, but it's highly suggested that he was slain by a Swarmlord during the final battle for Arcturus. But the details of this death are rather unknown. Essentially, we think he may have fought a high-tier opponent and died, but with no context, it's impossible to accurately gauge his skill or power. So let's summarize. Gorgrok Killfist led a WoG against the Imperial Knight world of Astropol during the Second Orc War in M41, but was ultimately killed dueling the High King of House Drakanos. Zog Steeltooth temporarily commanded the Orks of Arcturus in Overfiend Gorschnick's absence. He reportedly fought a Swarmlord during the final battle and died, though the exact circumstances are rather unknown. Bullets, or finds bullets, he has not lost, was a capable and sneaky leader, holding Gazkul's immense horde together after Ragnar Blackmane decapitated him. However, he lacks any confirmed combat feats. And finally, we have the Archmaniac of Calverna, who became a giant mech, wiring himself into the central processing engine of Magnos Majoris. While practically invincible due to this, his mind was utterly shattered, making him kinda unfit for a fight. With these feats laid out, I think we can easily eliminate 2. Bullets is removed because he has no actual combat feats, only assumptions of skill, and the Archmaniac of Calverna because he can't really do anything. Despite his near invulnerability, he's insane and immobile, so he can't really fight. And you're asking, why the fuck did you include him, Cal? Because that is such a silly character. And once again, fellas, the Death Skulls don't really have a lot of contenders to pick from, which is incredibly annoying. That leaves Gorgrok Killfist and Zog Steeltooth as the remaining 2 candidates. So in order to decide, let's compare a High King Knight versus a Swarmlord. A High King Knight is a single Imperial Knight at the very top of their hierarchy. Massive, heavily armored, armed with devastating ranged and melee weapons, and capable of taking on an entire Orc warband at once. And on the other hand, we have a Swarmlord, a monstrously powerful Tyranid bioform who has superhuman speed, strength, and foresight, often able to control lesser Tyranids and anticipate enemy movements. Zog Steeltooth reportedly fought a Swarmlord during the Arcturus War and died, but the exact circumstances of the fight, like we've discussed, are very unclear. It's unknown whether he put up a serious fight, or was overwhelmed instantly, or maybe just died from a rock hitting him in the dome. Because of this uncertainty, we can't definitely scale Zog against Killfist, but both faced Apex tier opponents of different kinds. Killfist versus a gigantic human-built war machine, Zog versus a terrifying alien bioentity. This makes picking the champion of the Death Skulls clan very, very tricky. Since we don't know the exact circumstances of Zog Steeltooth's fight with the Swarmlord, whether he put up a real fight or was quickly overwhelmed, it's safest to give the edge to Gorgrok Killfist. Killfist has a clear documented feat. He led a massive Death Skulls WoG against the Imperial Knight world of Astrofol and even managed to keep a High King Knight on his heels for at least part of the battle. That shows he performed significantly better in combat, making him the strongest candidate for the Death Skulls champion, despite ultimately being slain. So now that we've gone through all 6 major Orc clans, it's time to do a little bit of side questing, fellas. Because next up, we're turning to the Weird Boys, the Psychers of the Orc clans. Weird Boys are Orc Psychers who act as living conduits for the psychic energy generated by the Orc WoG. All Orcs radiate latent psychic powers, but Weird Boys uniquely absorb and channel this energy, often with little control, discharging it in devastating bursts like Psychic Vomit or Gork'll Get 'em. Their unstable nature means they live in raised, guarded weird houses and wear gaudy noise-making clothing to mark themselves and help manage their powers. If a weird boy absorbs too much energy without release, they can suffer an Ed-Bang, exploding violently and taking nearby orcs out with them. With that in mind, get it? Get it? I'll shut up. Sorry, bad joke. Let's move on to examine some of the most notable Weird Boy candidates and their feats to see who truly stands out among these volatile Orc Psychers. And since Death Gob didn't win with the Goths, if you guys remember, he will be featured here. For our candidates, we have 3. Old Zogwart. Yes, that's his name. His name is Zogwart. And I believe he probably went to Hogwarts. Second candidate, we have Zagdaka. And of course, thirdly, Death Gob. We're starting with Old Zogwart, who was hailed in the 4th edition Orc Codex to be the greatest of all Weird Boy Psychers. He is a legendary Orc Psycher whose powers are as unpredictable as they are devastating. Born on Zerk under a total eclipse and raised among blood vipers, Zogwart survived numerous attacks from the snakes around him, gaining an early reputation for his ferocity. His psychic abilities manifested violently in adolescence, allowing him to generate catastrophic effects. Most notably, he once destroyed an entire Imperial Guard company with a single blast, losing an eye in the process. For those asking, an Imperial Guard company is anywhere from 80 to 160 men. That's a lot of fellas. And he has the particular ability to turn enemies into squigs. Rising quickly through the ranks of his feral orc tribe, he eventually outshone his warboss, Scap Guts, and left to form the famed Weird Wog. Second, we have Zagdaka, who is featured in Clan Ra-Khan, a Codex Space Marine supplement, where he was described as an extraordinarily powerful orc weirdboy and warboss, commanding the respect and obedience of massive numbers of greenskins through his psychic might, a rare level of discipline for orc hordes. Leading a Weird Wog, he demonstrated immense destructive capability, including obliterating 2 Reaver Titans and leveling a portion of a 500-foot wall during the assault on the Forge World of Columbus. In personal combat, he killed Raven Guard Captain Sten before ultimately being incinerated along with his Weird Boy Guard by a concentrated barrage of Iron Hand Land Raider Redeemers under Iron Father Christos. Then finally, just in case you forgot, Deathgob, my personal favorite Weird Boy. He is a goth warphead who rose to command his own Weird Wog, after defeating his former warboss, Grok Iron Fist, in single combat. His growing power was considered such a threat that the Eldar Farseers of Ulfway orchestrated an imperial response. All 3 of these guys, thank Gork and Mork, have impressive feats to compare against. However, I think there is an easy elimination right off the bat, and it pains my heart. It really does. In fact, I'm gonna start cow crying, guys. It's Deathgob. We have to eliminate Deathgob. I mean, slaying an orc warboss is no joke, and if we put him against the Death Skulls or the Blood Axes, he would easily come out ahead. But he's facing 2 other powerful weird boys, and their feats are simply on another planet, folks. Let's compare these 2 fellas. Zagdaka's feats are pretty impressive first off. He single-handedly destroyed 2 Reaver Titans, massive war machines that dwarf most orcs, and erased a section of a 500-foot wall, all while leading an army. That's some raw destructive output on a truly epic scale. And then on the other hand, we have Old Zogwart, the Harry Potter of the orc world. He is marked in the 4th edition as the greatest of all weird boys. While his feats on paper are not as spectacular as Zagdaka, the claim that he is the strongest weird boy of everyone is a bold statement from official lore, implying his psychic potential and mastery of orc energies might surpass anyone else in existence. His abilities include turning enemies into squigs and controlling numerous psychic phenomena. So in a straight up fight, Zagdaka's destructive output against a Reaver Titan shows concrete battlefield dominance. Where here's Zogwart's claim as the most powerful weird boy leans on potential and a codex lore point. This really could go either way, and you could make an argument for either or. But this is a rare case where I'm going to pick the character with the stated lore to be the strongest, as opposed to picking the character with the better feats. Here's my reasoning, and you guys can butcher me in the comments, but here is my reasoning. Old Zogwart is explicitly stated to have the power to turn any enemy into squigs, which suggests either no practical limit to this ability or at the very least an incredibly high ceiling. In contrast, Zagdaka may have laid waste to 2 Reaver Titans and leveled sections of massive fortifications, but he ultimately could not survive a focused bombardment, showing that even his destructive power had clear vulnerabilities. While it's a very close call and it may be very controversial, the crown goes decisively to Old Zogwart himself, the most formidable weird boy to ever channel the power of Gork and Mork. And with that, we move on to the final orc group we'll be covering in today's video, the Gretchens. Gretchens are a lesser orc subspecies, often acting as the menial labors in orc society. Smaller and weaker than orcs, they rely on cunning, stealth, and resourcefulness rather than brute strength. Their physical traits, sharp-fanged jaws, excellent senses of smell and hearing, and even low-light vision help them survive the brutal hierarchy of orc culture. Many Gretchen have developed a kind of luck sense, allowing them to escape danger that would wipe out bigger orcs. Despite their lowly status, Gretchens can carve out their own niches, serving as personal attendants to orc, running black market operations, brewing fungus beer, looting battlefields, or even forming small, self-sufficient tribes capable of maintaining basic war machines. Some have even rebelled against their orc overlords, showing surprising organizational skill and ingenuity. With all that in mind, let's move on and take a look at the strongest and most notable Gretchen characters. For the Gretchens, their candidates are the Red Gobbo, Makari the Groot, and the Black Gobbo. Let's start with him this time around. The Black Gobbo is an orc Gretchen who, under the name Giblet, became the leader of the Grot Moss Grits. Originally an assistant to the Red Gobbo in Scrap City, Giblet secretly stole Sigma's presents with his game, leaving clues for his former boss to follow. Yes, he stole Christmas, guys. This is where they got the inspiration for the Nightmare of Christmas, from the Black Gobbo. When confronted, he revealed himself as the Black Gobbo, leading to a chaotic battle in which an explosive he threw destroyed part of the office and scattered the stolen presents across the city. Despite the explosion and the ensuing chaos, the Black Gobbo survived being thrown into the streets, demonstrating his slight cunning and his durability for a Gretchen. Next is Makari, also known as Makari the Groot. He is one of the most infamous orc Gretchens, often described as the luckiest Groot ever. Serving under the war boss Gazgul Thraka, Makari survived an astonishing number of deadly situations, including being accidentally sat on by Gazgul and nearly fed to a squig. Though he continued to follow his master into battle, he is the bearer of the Lucky Stick at Gazgul's war banner and served as his loyal prophet, recording the visions of the Great Wog and guiding orc forces on key campaigns. But the real reason Makari is on this list is the fact that he can't die. Whenever he does die, Gazgul can revive him, effectively rendering Makari nearly immortal as long as he remains in Gazgul's service. He has demonstrated decent combat prowess, at least for a Gretchen, including crawling inside a Lehman Russ tank to eliminate a whole crew and save Gazgul Thraka, who had just been shot in the chest by it. And finally, we come to the snazziest looking Gretchen, the Red Gobbo. This fella isn't a single individual, but rather a title held collectively by multiple Gretchen. In the Gretchen Revolutionary Committee, the GRC, on Gorka Morka. The position rotates among the Gretchen after an election, and whoever assumes the mantle takes on the persona, red coat, goggles, and custom slugga. The role serves as both a symbol and a tool to rally Gretchens into organized action against the oppressive orcs. The collective feats of the Red Gobbo center on inspiring and leading Gretchen uprisings, often turning the tide in battle against large enemies, including Chaos Cultists and Imperial forces. Each Red Gobbo has shown off their brilliance, rallying their fellow Gretchens to victory even under dire circumstances. While each individual Red Gobbo may be relatively weak on their own, the title's legacy shows consistent effectiveness in organizing and motivating Gretchens to achieve feats that would be impossible for them alone. So who's the strongest Gretchen? When it comes to these little fellas, Makari clearly takes the crown. While other Gretchens, like the Red Gobbo, demonstrate cleverness and occasional battlefield heroics, Makari's ability to survive and return from death repeatedly thanks to Gazgul Thraka's intervention makes him functionally immortal. This unique combination of loyalty, durability, and immortality elevates him far beyond any of his Gretchen peers, cementing his status as the strongest Gretchen by far. And with that, we've wrapped up power scaling the strongest orcs across each clan and subspecies. From the cunning blood axes, to the psychic weird boys, the looting death skulls, and finally, the near immortal Makari among the Gretchen, we've seen just how varied orc power can be, and how hilariously chaotic it all gets when you throw a bunch of greenskins onto the battlefield. Before concluding this video, let's do a quick little power scaling recap. For the Goths clan, we selected Gazgul Urak Thraka. For the Evil Sons, we picked Gorguts Ed Unta. For the Bad Moons, we picked two champions cause I'm a pussy, Oofhawk Blackhawk and Gargas Teethgrabba. For the Snake Bites, we picked Tuska Grobe World Killer. For the Blood Axes, we picked Orca Mungus. For the Death Skulls, we picked Gorgrok Killfist. For the Weird Boys, we picked Old Zog Wart. And finally, for the Gretchens, we picked Little Makari. Once again, if you guys hit the goal, over 1,000 likes and 250 comments, I will attempt to power scale all the minor clans, which may be one clusterfuck, but I'm ready to frickin' do it anyway, fellas. I plan to continue this series with the Craft Worlds, the Tau Casts, maybe the Tyranid Hive ships. I don't know if that's really quantifiable now that I'm thinking about it. and maybe even the Necrons as well. I have to look into the logistics regarding those factions, but I'm going to try to do my best because someone's gotta power scale these factions, fellas. For those in my Discord and following along on my Patreon, the Star Wars vs 40k video has been delayed. The script is so fucking long and I just can't get it out within 1 week, so I'll be finishing it piece by piece. I hope you all understand, but in the meantime, I've got a lot more planned for the month of November. Next week, we are tackling the long-awaited Chaos Warbands. Yes, that video is finally coming, and after that, we'll begin my new dueling series, where we'll be pitting random characters from across the 40k universe against each other, based on what you guys want. I let my Patreon pick this matchup first, and they decided to do Leman Russ vs Teef Tycoons, both in base form. So that will be the first dueling matchup. Following that, we may do some Leman Russ theorizing, tackle power scaling every single greater demon, the Phoenix Lords, and then the video you've all been waiting for. Who is the strongest Space Marine in 40k? Ooh-wee, I'm excited for that one. I hope you guys are. Mark your calendars, people. It's coming. It's on the board. It'll be here before you even know it. If you want the full schedule, it is on my Discord, so go join. The description is in the comments. Before we wrap this up, a huge shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members, Ryania Basket, Omar, Ritter S, Bossy Paul, Keydri, Nico149, and William Strong. I really appreciate each and every single one of you guys, and the support is insane. It really keeps me motivated and brings me closer to my dream of becoming a full-time power scaling go. If you're a member on my Patreon, don't forget to go vote on which video you'd like to see next. And if you're a member, make sure to drop some emojis that you get with the membership just to show off how goddamn cool they are. Once again, I will never ever lock my content away behind a paywall, but I would really appreciate it if you guys would go check out those memberships or my Patreon. But that about does it for this episode of Powerscaling Peeps. As always, my favorite bovine, stay milked, stay extremely thirsty, and remember to scream "Wag" at every elderly person you see. You guys mean a lot to me, and I really appreciate all the support the herd has been giving me lately. I hope you're all having a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next video, which will be the Chaos Warbands. See you soon, herd.